For the better part of 2 years, this has basically been the mountain bike YouTuber starter pack. The Hero 4 Black with a dead cat mounted to the Evo SS gimbal. You get amazing smooth footage and crystal clear sound. It's been a heck of a workhorse. Although recently, the Hero 7 Black has gotten a lot of people ditching their gimbal in favor of the built-in stabilization of the Hero 7 Black, though the problem is, the audio out of the box really is not that great, and it doesn't help that the menu system on this is less than intuitive. But I've spent a good amount of time playing around with this camera, and I'm pretty sure I figured out the best settings for mountain bike POV footage, or just good audio in general. So today I'm going to spend some time with you and demystify the Hero 7 Black and show you how to get the best audio possible. Stick around. Hey everyone, my name is Joseph and welcome back. So, if you've been following my channel for a while, you know that this isn't the first time that I've played around with GoPro audio. I actually did a whole series where I basically dissected the Hero 5 Black just to figure out how the new microphones worked. And if you're curious to see more about that, you can check out the link in the description below after this video to watch the whole playlist. It's pretty interesting. I wanted to dive back in and help you guys get your setup dialed, regardless if you're just using the internal microphones or if you want to go fancy and use an external setup. Now, there is a bit of an issue when it comes to the microphones and audio quality on the Hero 7, and this actually started back on the Hero 5. GoPro decided to make all their GoPro products waterproof, which is great for people who like to go swimming with their GoPros or take it to the ocean or even just use it out in the rain. The problem is that anytime you put something between the sound source and a microphone, it kind of blocks a little bit of that sound, so the microphone can't hear it as well. I mean, you can still hear it, but you definitely notice when there's something blocking the sound. Now, GoPro has been really working to try to improve this, and lately with the Hero 7, they actually thinned out that membrane a little bit to allow more of the sound through, and then kind of They tuned the processing to be able to allow you to hear more clearly. Now, before we dive into the actual menu, I want to show you guys the actual microphone setup physically on the camera. This will help explain things further on. I'm going to be using my Hero 5 Black as an example because the microphones are exactly the same. And as a bonus, I've already removed the waterproofing so you can get a better idea of where everything is and how it works. The first two microphones I'm going to point out are these two stereo microphones, one located right next to the record button and off to the side here. The third microphone is the wind microphone, and it's hidden behind this little speed hole that I drilled on the front. I'll talk about that later. By the way, if you ever scratch these lens covers, they're actually pretty easy to replace, so I'll have a link to that in the description below. Just pop it off, put on the new one, and you're good to go. Now we can take a good look at this wind microphone, and this is actually much different than the stereo microphones. It has a much thicker and wider diaphragm. It's meant to work in higher pressures. Now it's connected to the outside world through this channel here that you can see engraved on the inside chassis and on the back of the front cover. Now I drilled this hole in here trying to experiment with different microphone configurations. I would highly advise against ever doing this to your GoPro. It didn't work the way I thought it would. Now that we have some good foundation knowledge, we're actually going to jump into the camera and get to the meat and potatoes of this video, changing the settings. So, what we need to do is we need to go into the menu here, and if you've never fiddled with your camera before, you're pretty much only going to see this, only a few options. We need to turn on ProTune in order to get to the audio settings that we need to change. Now here's a little bit of a fun but kind of annoying fact. Just turning on ProTune and opening up those menus actually flips a switch in the camera to make it record at a higher video quality setting. It's kind of dumb that this is a hidden feature of the camera. I really wish they would advertise it a little bit better, maybe make it a actual button you can press of low video quality, high video quality, or just make it record in that quality all the time. I don't know why they do it, but whatever. Now you know. So now that we have ProTune turned on, you're going to be overwhelmed with a bunch of different settings here. I'll make another video following up on how to change a lot of these video settings just to tune the image that much better, though leaving this as is perfectly fine. So we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom here, and we're going to find the mics option. And remember how I said that there are 3 microphones on the camera? Well, that wind microphone that's at the front, if you leave this at auto, GoPro will actually favor that microphone because it's always kind of listening to all the different microphones and trying to figure out which one has the best sound, and it always kind of guesses wrong, and it favors that front microphone, which sounds like hot garbage. Here's an example. Hero 7 Black set to wind only on the microphone setting. Now I'm actually going to change the setting to stereo only. Now listen to the difference. Hero 7 Black set to stereo only. Hero 7 Black set to wind only on the microphone setting. This, in of itself, is the only setting you really need to change to get good audio if you don't plan on running an external microphone. So, while I have you here, let me show you some examples of using this Hero 7 Black with a wind slayer over it next to the Hero 4 Black. I was kind of worried about the weather today, but it's actually turned out pretty nice. I was kind of worried about the weather today, but it's actually turned out pretty nice. If after all that, the audio coming from the internal microphones just still isn't where you want it to be, there is always the option of buying the kind of expensive USB to microphone adapter from GoPro. A few weeks ago, I took this Sony Lav microphone connected to the USB adapter out on a ride. And of course, I had a little dead cat on it to keep the wind noise down. And I was pretty happy with the results, and here's an example of it compared next to the Hero 4 Black, which I had set up right next to my Hero 7.
What Joseph said.
Exactly.
What Joseph said.
Exactly. What was interesting was I put out a poll on Instagram, and I didn't tell people what they were, but I kind of did a little bit of a blind test to see what people preferred. Everyone preferred the Hero 4 Black, and a lot of people told me it was because this microphone sounded pretty darn harsh. And I think what was happening, this was capturing a lot of higher frequencies than most people are used to, and to them, especially on a cell phone speaker, it didn't sound that great. To me, if I was being honest, it sounded pretty darn good because I actually have a little bit of hearing loss. I can't hear higher frequencies as well as I used to when I was 16. And so, yeah, be kind to your ears, kids, because when they start to fade, there's no getting it back. Don't you just love these cliche YouTube transitions? But honestly, while I was editing this, I realized I should have been more clear. The lav microphone worked great, but if I were to do it again, I would use a different lav mic, which I happen to have. I have this Rode lav mic, which is right here, and I decided to give it a try on the GoPro next to the Sony, and here's the results. This is a quick audio test of the Sony lav microphone. This is a quick audio test of the Rode lav microphone. Let's geek out for a second and take a closer look at what's actually happening here. I've got both the clips open in Adobe Audition, and in this one I'm wearing the Sony Lav microphone. I've selected the portion where I'm talking and applied a leveling filter. Over here is a frequency analysis, and I'm going to highlight this so we can compare it to me wearing the Rode Lav microphone. Once again, leveled everything, going to scan it, and you can see that the Sony Lav has a definite favoritism towards higher frequencies, but it doesn't make it bad. It's just personal preference, so try different setups. One last thing I want to mention about external microphones is you have to be careful what type you use. Bigger isn't always better. For example, this Rode Videomicro is an amazing microphone for mounting on a full-size camera, but it has directional pickup, meaning that it picks up more of the sound in front of it than behind it. It actually has what's called sound rejection. So if you're trying to pick up all the different trail sounds and you talking and your buddy talking and the hooting and hollering, this is the worst microphone I could think of, because anything in front of it is going to sound great, but everything behind it is going to sound muffled. Now, you can just plug in this USB adapter and go, and it'll work. But there's actually one more option in here to tune the audio just a little bit more. And of course, it's not in the same spot as you would expect, because that would make sense. No, it's actually a hidden menu under Preferences. So you swipe down from the top here, hit Preferences, and scroll down to Input Output. From there, you can select Audio Input, and here is basically a way to tune how sensitive the microphone is or tell the GoPro what type of microphone you're plugging into it. So standard mic is going to be what you want to use 90% of the time. However, if you find that your audio is too quiet, then you want to select Standard Plus, and this just boosts the sensitivity of the audio so that way it can capture more. Here's the thing. If you find that standard mic is too quiet, but standard mic plus is causing distortion sometimes, I would actually go with the more quiet option, because it's easier to bring quiet audio up than try to repair just distorted audio that's clipping and just sounds terrible. That's basically a waste of time. So it's always safer to go with quieter audio than loud. Finally, the last GoPro audio setting that I want to talk about is actually an extremely advanced one that I don't recommend for most people, but I want to explain what it is because it really confuses a lot of people, and that is raw audio. What raw audio is it doesn't actually affect the video file audio at all. In fact, it saves a completely separate audio track next to the video file, and depending on the settings you choose, it can have different outcomes. And that's quite honestly what confuses people the most, because they try to open that audio file and sometimes they don't hear anything at all. At least they don't realize that they're hearing something, they just can't hear it. You know what? Let's go to my computer. I can explain it better there. Alright, so here we have our GoPro files, and you can see that next to each video file is an audio track. This is the raw audio file. If we open up this file in Adobe Audition, we could take a closer look at what's happening. This particular file was recorded in raw audio low. What that does is it does not pay attention to any other mic setting you have. So, for example, this was recorded using the internal microphones. Even though it was set to stereo only, it still recorded 3 tracks because it recorded from all 3 microphones. So you have your stereo microphones here, and then your wind microphone here. Now, you can see that there really isn't much going on here, and that's because low raw audio basically applies 0 processing. So I'm playing it here, and you can see the meters moving, but you're not really going to hear much. Now, this is squarely in the realm of audio engineering level of experience to be able to make the most out of. You can turn up the audio here, but it's so raw and unprocessed, you have these massive peaks and valleys, and it just takes a better person than I am to get the most out of this audio track. Now, this next audio file was recorded with medium raw audio, and it did only record the stereo tracks, but once again, there's basically no audio processing. The last audio track is recorded with raw high audio. Now, it basically does 90% of the processing, but with a bit of a caveat. Let's take a look at this video file here, and you can see here that the audio track basically gets cut off at about 8,000K. Yeah, right under 8,000K. But if you go over to the raw audio track, it goes basically as high as the microphones can pick up. So this is great for 2 kind of scenarios. One, you're recording like maybe a music concert and you want to get the maximum fidelity possible. Or you're just someone that wants to get the best trail sound possible, and it really doesn't take up that much extra space, but it is something that you need to consider on longer rides if you need to make the most out of that SD card you have. Of course, some of you may be wondering, well, Joe, what about getting the Hero 7 to work on a gimbal? I've kind of got some bad news for you. It doesn't. Unfortunately, ever since the Hero 5, it's been impossible to get good audio with a gimbal. And let me show you why. This is a quick audio test. Now, let me explain what's happening. So, remember how I talked about earlier that there's a thin rubber membrane over all the microphones? Well, even though GoPro has done a pretty good job at trying to get it thinner to make it easier to hear past, it still has to boost the microphone sensitivity. The problem with that is that these motors, if you listen close enough, you can actually hear them vibrate and whine a little bit while they strain to hold the camera up. Because if you turn off the gimbal, well, it falls right over. So the microphones can actually hear the motors. The other problem is, even if you put it onto stereo, the GoPro is always going to try and fight to find the best audio source, so it's going to kind of bring up and down the levels on the different microphones. And while it does that, it basically butchers the audio. GoPro definitely put a very aggressive tune on the audio processing there. There are ways to clean up the audio, and GoPro actually does this internally whenever you plug it into the Karma Grip. Now, if you watched BKXC's video when he was experimenting with all these different setups, he noticed that a few seconds after pressing record on his Hero 7, the audio would sound good, but then suddenly it would get flat.
Listen to this next clip. It's like the first 5 seconds that the GoPro records, it's like sampling the environment, and then it turns on something that is not right at all.
Diabolical. No way.
What that is, the Karma Grip is kind of loading in a custom audio tune where it's filtering out where the motor whine likes to live. Now, I can do that by hand on a computer, and let me show you how to do that real quick just to give an example. All right, once again, we are in Adobe Audition, and here's a clip that I just recorded a second ago. This is a quick audio test of the Hero 7 Black and the Evo SS Gimbal. So you can definitely hear that motor noise that's going on right here. And there's a couple ways to do this in Adobe Audition, but I'm going to show you what is essentially happening in the Karma Grip. You can see that these frequencies are hanging out in about the 1000 kilohertz range, and I just have this equalizer here, and I'm going to actually remove that frequency. This is a quick audio test of the Hero 7 Black and the Evo SS Gimbal with a little bit of tweaking in Adobe Audition. So I got rid of the motor noise for sure, but it absolutely butchered the audio. Thing is, this isn't far off from what BKXC was experiencing. Now, Van Can actually found a little bit of a hack around that. If you use an older firmware on the Karma Grip, while it will recognize the Hero 7 Black as a GoPro and work perfectly fine, it doesn't know how to load in that custom audio profile tune, so it just skips it, and he actually gets really good audio out of it. Maybe one day he'll make a tutorial on it. Although, to be fair, other people have tried this hack after he told them about it, and they, didn't have that filter load up, but then the problem was that they could hear the motor whine. So maybe Van Can just has the golden Karma Grip. If he ever decides to sell that on eBay, you should just swoop in and pick that up because it's probably the only one in existence that works that good. I'm actually going to be making a video pretty soon talking about what the perfect action camera gimbal would look like if I got to design it, because while optical stabilization has come a long way, there's still no replacement for a good gimbal in some cases. So if you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that button right here and also hit the notification icon, that little bell button, so that way you don't miss any future videos. If you liked this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button and maybe share it with a friend that's been trying to get their GoPro audio set up. That way they can hit that record button and go find their next adventure. Have a good one.